Perfect. And look at that. It immediately starts doing it, which is sweet. So I want to do a really quick cleanup, but actually I'll do it in a moment because that way you have better context. This is our material now. We right click and we say create material instance because we are deriving a child of this material parent. And we say matte vortex blue. This is a child, so we don't want it to reside in the folder with the parents. We move it out to the generic folder that is called materials. And we do save all, so we don't lose it. And let's open this up. Exciting. So in here, let's change by pressing this to a plain primitive instead of like the orb. And that way we can see a bit better. And let's see what we can do. So the color map, we're going to leave to this Perlin mask for now because we haven't created anything else. I'll show you in the next video how to create some that will serve us the purpose that we want. But let's play with this. So polar center, like enable them all, okay? So the polar center we're not gonna change because see how it just like makes it so it's not centered. This could give you like some interesting effects like this, and you could use it sometime, but not today. Then the diagonal speed is the animation, the panning that I mentioned. And in this case, I'm going to put it to 0.04, for example. And if I rotate around like that, you can see that it's now going like inwards, exactly like what we were after, because it's getting closer to this visual that we have here, which is lovely. Then what's next? The tiling, this tiling, makes texture tile in this way and then the other one in this way. So nothing like special there. Just be aware that if you change the U tile, you sometimes get this seam over there. That is normal and you just need to find a number that works for you in the amount of tiling with your current texture in order to eliminate that seam. Okay, just pay attention with that and be careful with it. This styles it like inwards, which is super cool. And I want to do a really quick cleanup, as I mentioned. So like if I'm saying that this appearing when you change the U is natural, you might in the current setup actually get a seam around there while you're observing your effect in here. And by the way, let's actually go down here, select our plane that we worked so hard on in the previous chapter and drag the effect up there. Look at that, super. And you can actually see exactly what I was trying to tell you. Do you see this line? There's YouTube compression going on, so it might actually be incredibly hard to see, but I'll try to pause the video in a second or a play, in a second or a play, in a second or and show you the line. So that line, let's fix that line. The way this line appears is due to something called Mipmapping. So the way game engines work is we have an object and a texture on the object, and that texture, when you're up close, is your original texture. Let's say that I created this Perlin noise and it is 4K texture. I am super close to it, my camera distance is very close to it, so it loads the highest Mipmap, which is the 4K. But the engine in the background actually creates a pyramid of lower Mipmaps, and those are the texture shrunk down. If this is 4K, then the next Mipmap will be 2K, the one after 1K, the one after 512, and so on, up until like a really small one. And when the camera distance increases with the player moving, it automatically switches to the different Mipmaps. That way, we get texture streaming where we can be looking at an entire scene, an open world of tons and tons of different things, but in memory we really load just a lower Mipmap representation because a 4K texture is larger in size in its memory representation than 512, for example. So that's why we have something like Mipmapping. It also gives us other benefits because our screen, the player screen, everyone's screen really, is a pixel grid. You have a bunch of pixels on a 2D matrix. And if eating a noise that is highly detailed and overly sharp, and that texture has some kind of a grid pattern that is happening on it, like the artist made it that way, let's say that it has some type of like sci-fi grid. What might happen is that with camera going further back and back, if this texture was left to always be a 4K incredibly sharp one, the grid of the pattern that is on the texture might align in such a way with the grid of the screen of the viewer that there might be a glitchy patterns happening on the screen. Those are called moire patterns. I don't really have any way to show them to you right now, but I might try to put on the screen some examples of moire patterns. Moire patterns, we eliminate them thanks to Mipmaps. So that is another benefit to Mipmap. But in this case, the Mipmaps actually give us an issue and they create that seam over here with us moving in and out. So we need to solve that. Perfect. So let us change the Mipmaps and fix that seam. So the way I do that is I click, the Mipmap control is in here, by the way, or in the texture object itself. We will not go to the texture object itself because this is a derivative from the engine and it is a default thing that we don't want to change. Instead, we right click here, and we don't right click, we just click on it. And here, Mip value mode, we go to derivative, okay? Explicit derivative to compute Mipmap levels. And it gives us an error because it exposes ddx and ddy of the UVs. And in order to fix that, we will add texture coordinates, okay? And then we'll say ddx for utility, and then ddy. We input each of these in here, and the x goes up there, the y down there. Cool. And let's place that here, save. And there we go. Now the seam is not there. So we fixed that and that's perfect. Again though, to repeat, this fixes the Mipmapping issue. If you change this to a value that is like imperfect, there will be a seam that doesn't have anything to do with the Mipmap explanation. That is just normal. Cool. So let's save and let's go here. Perfect, so we're done with that part. So in order to give it this blue appearance that I have there, we need to feed it an actual texture. We'll do that in a few steps though, because before that I have a few other things that I want to do as housekeeping. I want to go back to the very start where it says polar center, okay? And actually let me take a look at everything. So I want to select it and here make a group for it, and I will say polar chord, and I will put a sort priority of 0. Okay. Next, polar speed, I will say polar chord as a group and sort priority of 1. What this does is if I save and then I go back to the material, see it actually adds them into their own category and it sorts them in the numbers that I give it. And I love that because there's going to be a lot going on here in a few minutes and we want it to be easy and pleasant for us to navigate as artists. So go back there and continue. This one goes polar coordinates and value of 2 because the top one was 1. The tiling, polar coordinates 3, polar coordinates again 4. And the color map I will add into its own that I will call textures. And I'll say, oops, excuse me, textures, I lost it, textures. And I'll say 0. Now that might actually put it to be kind of more to the top. Or no, it kind of like lives in there. If you want to order these, I guess we could give them numbers, pro tip. So here, let's say 0, and then slash. And then here, let's say 1, and then slash. And now I have to select each and change it to 1 slash, and then 1 slash for this. And I didn't do that in my old work. I should start doing it because I kind of love it now that we've done it. There you go. Look how cute that is. Properly ordered. Perfect. So we have that. What's next? Let's take a look. So now for our next step, I want to expose some control over things when it comes to color and add them in the emission. Okay, so let's start building that up. So this is our colored map that doesn't have colors now, but it will have it like a bit later. And let's say that I want to make it more powerful. Whatever colors are there, I want to make more obvious. So the way I will do that is I go with a multiply and it goes in there. And here I'll say convert parameter, this float that I added, and I'll say color map power. It goes in there. By default, I'm going to place it to 1. Actually, in my other work, I like the color map power name better, but in my other work it's called emission, and I'm going to keep it to that because that way it will be easier for me to give you the values that give us exactly the blue vortex effect that we have over there. Cool. And we want to then add the result of this with something else. And now what this something else will be. This is a bit of a trick, by the way, that I'm about to do, but I introduce a secondary texture like this one, but I think in the case of some of my effects, the secondary texture will be similar, so I'll be reusing this one. Let me actually check. Or no, I guess I keep it to gray, like you can actually see it there. So let's add it though. So I add secondary texture and I call it opacity mask, and then I expose some controls over how it works and how I can actually use the noise of the black and white on that mask in order to give an extra layer visual. Control C and Control V that down there and rename, F2 for rename, to opacity mask. And this will be sort priority of 1. Cool. Now what we're gonna do is we actually reuse this append in the UVs. Double click here to give it a better order. And the X goes here, the U goes there. Similar work to before. Cool. Next up, I want to add a Lerp matte expression. Linear interpolate, that's the one. And I want to build 2 floats. The top one I'm going to call minimum opacity, and the bottom one I will call max opacity. Top one will be 0, the bottom one will be 1, and bottom goes in B, top goes in A. The alpha will be the red channel or the green channel or the blue. It literally doesn't matter because this opacity mask will always be giving a linear texture. A linear texture means that it is a texture that doesn't have RGB colors. It has just one flat black and white value. And when we add a black and white flat texture into Unreal through a node like this, it makes the RG and B be identical. So it doesn't matter from which one I drag. A quick explanation of what this is. These are 2 sliders that I can change the values, and if this was the texture that is black and white, it makes the blacks deeper, the whites like more exposed. It essentially is, exposure is a good way to say it, like it gives me control over exposure. Imagine in Photoshop you have the histogram scan. Histogram scan is in Designer actually, Substance Designer. In Photoshop it will be levels. You know how you manipulate the black and white on a curve? Well, this is an overly simplified version where we don't have a curve, but instead we are like manipulating just the 2 ends of the values. And it's just a trick that I really love, and you'll see how it gives us power in a few moments. Moiré patterns, we don't get them. Is it Moiré or Moiré? I'll check in a second. Moiré patterns, we eliminate them thanks to Mipmaps. So that is another benefit to